A federal judge says Nazis were treated better than Venezuelan gang members as the Boasberg hearings continue. The Supreme Court hears oral arguments in a major congressional redistricting case along racial lines, and a Trump administration group chat scandal raises several questions. I'm Tony Kinnett from the Daily Signal's Tony Kinnett Cast, syndicated nationally at 7 p.m. Eastern. It is Tuesday, March 25th, 2025. This is the Daily Signal's top news in 10. An appeals court consisting of Trump-appointed Justin Walker, Obama-appointed Patricia Millett, and Bush-appointed Karen Henderson held a hearing yesterday considering the removal of District Court Judge James Boasberg's order forbidding the Trump administration from removing illegal immigrant gang members from the country under the Alien Enemies Act. While Boasberg turned down the Trump administration's motion to vacate the order, suggesting that each gang member deserved an individual hearing first, it was Millett's statement that turned heads.
There were plane loads of people. I mean, it's a class action. There were plane loads of people. There were no procedures in place to notify people. Nazis got better treatment under the Alien Enemy Act than has happened here, where the proclamation required the promulgation of regulations, and they had hearing boards before people were removed. And yet here, there's nothing in there about hearing boards. There's no regulations. And nothing was adopted by the agency officials that were administering this. People weren't given notice. They weren't told where they were going.
For the record, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt executed 6 Nazis, including an American citizen, in the Washington, D.C. jail after holding a military tribunal. Trump administration board czar Tom Homan responded to this particular Nazi comment a little bit later in the day.
Can I ask you about what the federal appeals judge is saying? They said, noting that alleged Nazis were given better treatment during World War II than the Trump administration treated Venezuelan.
Well, first of all, it's ridiculous. It's just another example of a radical judge saying something that's just disgusting. To compare anything to the Nazis, the Holocaust. We follow the law. Alien Enemies Act is clear. A law that was passed by Congress, signed by a president. We're following, unlike the last administration, we're actually following the law. What we did on those planes was remove terrorists. MS-13 and TDA were our designated terrorist organization. We removed terrorists. And to compare that any way whatsoever with Nazis is disgusting on every level.
Last night, Attorney General Pam Bondi and the Trump Department of Justice notified Judge Boasberg that the government will invoke state secret privilege to deny his demands for granular details about deportation flights. Quote, accordingly, the state secret privilege forecloses further demands for details that have no place in this matter, and the government will address the court's order to show cause tomorrow by demonstrating that there is no basis for the suggestion of noncompliance with any binding order. As Bondi emphasized the heart of the case, quote, this is a case about the president's plenary authority, end quote. The appeals court did not immediately rule on the administration's request to lift Judge Boasberg's order. The Supreme Court heard oral arguments yesterday in a major congressional redistricting case along racial lines. Louisiana's congressional districts were redrawn after prompting from the Biden administration that led to a serious lawsuit on what rules state legislatures would have to follow when drawing up House districts. We sat down with the Heritage Foundation's Hans von Spakovsky to discuss it. Check it out.
The state did new boundary lines for its congressional districts. In 2022, it has 6 congressional districts. One of those 6 is designated as what's called a majority-minority district to satisfy parts of the Voting Rights Act. That's a district in which black voters are actually a majority, so they'll be able to elect their candidate of choice. But they got sued. NAACP and others sued them saying, oh, well, yeah, you gave us 1 out of 6. You should have given us 2 out of the 6 congressional districts. You should have created a second one in which black voters could elect their candidate of choice. Now, they claimed that the legislature was acting in a discriminatory fashion. Their evidence on that was pretty much non-existent. Really, the basis for their claim was proportionality. You know, what they said was black voters are about a third of the population of Louisiana, therefore we ought to get 2 of the 6 seats. Yeah.
Some kind of weird racial apportionment argument?
Yes.
Do they know how it sounds, or is this just me?
No, I mean, that was the essence of their arguments, but they tried claiming discrimination. Now, the problem with that claim is that the Supreme Court has said on prior occasions that is not a basis for a lawsuit under the Voting Rights Act. And in fact, the Voting Rights Act very specifically says that you cannot file a claim under the Voting Rights Act based on that proportionality argument. But in any event, they got a court to agree with them. So the legislature went back, drew up a new congressional district map for the state. And this time they did create 2 black congressional districts. But they got sued again, this time by voters saying, the only factor you used in drawing up that second district was race, and you can't do that. And in fact, another court said, you're right, that violates what the U.S. Supreme Court said in an old case called Reno versus Shaw, in which the Supreme Court said, well, race can be one of many factors you may take into account when you're drawing new boundary lines, but it can't be the prominent factor. If you do, that violates the one person, one vote standard of the 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Doctrine.
Yeah, because we get into some really weird places really quickly. I mean,
Yes.
at least in far as 2025, New Mexico has the highest Hispanic population as a percentage of its total population, just under 50%. So we're saying that half of New Mexico's congressional districts have to be majority Hispanic because they're going to assume, well, Hispanic people would all vote the same. It's so it's a mix of antiquated and just goofy.
But it's also very discriminatory. Look, the Reno versus Shaw case where the court said you couldn't do that, the state of North Carolina had basically created a black district that looked like a barbell. It was these 2 large black areas of the state connected by what ran in between them? The interstate.
Lastly, a Trump administration group chat scandal raises several questions, concerns, comments, rants, and a whole lot else. Jeffrey Goldberg, The Atlantic's editor-in-chief, published a story yesterday alleging that Mike Waltz, the White House National Security Advisor, had added him to a private group chat between cabinet officials on the encrypted messaging app Signal. Goldberg shared screenshots of the chat showing Vice President J.D. Vance criticizing Europe and alleged that he was sent war plans on the U.S. Houthi strike 2 hours before the operation. The White House has acknowledged that the screenshotted messages appear to be genuine and stated that an investigation had begun. There are a few problems with Goldberg's story, which may have been embellished, but Democrats are already on the floor of the Senate and social media calling this one of the greatest military intelligence leaks in history.
This is one of the most stunning breaches of military intelligence I have read about in a very, very long time. What we have here are senior U.S. leaders, including the Vice President and Secretary of Defense, having classified discussions of military action over an unsecure app. It's bad enough that a private citizen was added to this chain, but it's far worse that sensitive military information was exchanged on an unauthorized application, especially when that sensitive military information was so important. If these detailed exchanges about coordinating military operations fell into the hands of America's enemies, it could get people killed. It could severely harm our military. It would put America's national security in danger.
Of note, both the Obama and Biden administrations announced strikes to the media and the world as much as 72 hours in advance, allowing terror groups like the Taliban and Houthis to scatter. We couldn't find any comment from Senator Schumer condemning those leaks. By tonight, I'm sure we'll have more details on this and other developing stories. So before you go, check the description below to make sure you're subscribed to the Tony Kinnett Cast, and join us tonight at 7 p.m. for updates on the explosive devices found in a Tesla dealership in Austin and financing options for your fast food order. I'm Tony Kinnett, and this has been the Daily Signal's Top News in 10. Take care.